Hi, everyone. As promised, here is a screencast for you regarding the Great Gatsby paper. It says in the syllabus that it's due on the 9th. I'm going to go ahead and extend that to the morning of the 12th at 9 a.m. because I didn't get the opportunity to create this for you sooner, and I think some of you were waiting for it based on some of your questions. So here is what you are doing. You are writing a paper about the 1920s, the real life 1920s, which is why you've done an assignment about prohibition. You learned a little bit about organized crime, and you've learned a little bit about some of the other ways people behaved in the real world 1920s. This is a humanities paper. It happens to be about a work of literature, but it is not an English paper. Okay, so we're all writing a humanities paper. Now, how do you do that? You focus on the values. You don't focus on the plot. You don't focus on the characters. You focus on the values, which is what the real world of the 1920s was about. So make your thesis about values of the 1920s. People were this, and that, as demonstrated in F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Now, once you get into your body paragraphs, you're going to want to start with each of those values that you listed in your thesis. Do one per paragraph, of course, like you would write a regular paper. Then use the characters and quotes from scenes from the book to support your values-driven thesis. Notice I'm striking home here with this values-driven thing. Okay, so you go back through the book and you find your opportunities to show where people demonstrated those values that are in your thesis. And you can use one example, you can use two examples. At that point, you would talk very briefly about the particular scene that was going on when Daisy said this, or when they all took the train into the city, or something like that. At that point, you bring in the book. Make sure you're not retelling me the whole plot. I have read this book so many times. Then, when you put your quote in your paragraph, make sure you cite the text, Fitzgerald, comma, and the page number. If you're using an e-version of the book, that might be a little more difficult, but I'm sure you can figure it out. If you're using a quote that's over 40 words, make sure you indent the thing, make sure you single space it. You really shouldn't have to do that, but I imagine somebody might. And then remember, I'll put this in the circle I already have, that you're discussing the values of the era throughout the story. Make sure that you have at least 3 thesis points, which means 3 body paragraphs, and that you quote quote the book, every single argument that you make. And then make sure you have a strong conclusion that brings me back to your thesis. And then a work cited. If you're quoting a work that is outside of your own, even if it is your own, you need to have a work cited for this paper. So you're writing a paper about the 1920s, then you're using F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby like it's a research text to show how this value, that value, and the other value are demonstrated throughout the story. You'll have a work cited, you'll quote your book, and you will cite your quotes. Okay? So if you have any questions about how to write this paper, again, I am going to be extending the deadline to the 12th. And let me erase some of this here and I can show you what it actually says. This, by the way, is in the impact module minus the green that I'm putting all over it. This eraser is just awesome here. So focus on characters and what they represent about the 1920s, not about their actions in the plot, please. Consider the role of responsibility. That's a great thesis, honestly, is looking at who's responsible and who's not in the 1920s and how that's portrayed in the story. Just some other things to think about is how he foreshadows the events of the 1930s. You might put that into your conclusion. So think about some of these things. By all means, email me if you have any questions. You can call my office throughout the week. That number is 407-582-4823. Happy writing.